Nearly 3 million people take the SAT in over 170 different countries in each academic year. Also, 1.6 million people take the ACT in each year. As we probably all know, many colleges and universities have decided to go test optional this year in response to the coronavirus pandemic, allowing students to apply to schools without those standardized tests. Now, I'd like to persuade you that the SAT and ACT are no longer necessary for college applications, and they're an inaccurate representation of one's knowledge. Now, I'm sure many of us have taken either the SAT, the ACT, or any form of standardized test, and you'd probably agree that you'd never use that knowledge again in your life. While standardized tests such as the SAT and ACT are no longer relevant to the college application process, since they are a poor representation of one's knowledge when there's other factors more effective to applying to schools. It's also expensive, and with the recent developments of COVID-19, the test has not been required due to testing safety concerns. I'd like to talk about the SAT a little bit more since it is the more popular test, but they are interchangeable. Now, the SAT and other standardized testing isn't a great representation of a student's character or knowledge. The SAT doesn't measure intelligence or innate ability. It's merely a test that is best prepared for by taking rigorous classes and reading a lot. According to PBS, the SAT was originally created to identify talented students that came from underprivileged backgrounds by looking at aspects of knowledge that wouldn't have been gained from school. Since schools don't specifically teach many of the things that are featured on the test, it is counterproductive to the original purpose, since the students would have to take classes or practice tests and able to demonstrate that knowledge. Now, there's also a racial, ableist, and economic bias, since it gives a clear disadvantage to students, especially those who live in low-income households. According to Forbes, the average reading score for those students whose family income is below $20,000 is 433, but the average for those with an income above $200,000 is 570. Now, this can be applied to other sections of the test, but the trend is still the same, that underprivileged students are at a disadvantage when they are taking the SAT. Bowdoin College, the first to be test optional, decided that this was a way to explore other factors that would make a student a good candidate for admittance to the college. The dean of the school, Roger Howell Jr., said that he preferred that the admissions process focus more on the human quality of the students, instead of using the SAT scores. They would weigh their decisions on other factors that really show who a student is, such as their service to their communities, teacher recommendations, the rigor of their course load, and extracurricular activities that they participated in. These factors would demonstrate the quality of that student rather than solely on their academic abilities. Now, just because the SAT was waived doesn't mean that they don't look at the academic intellectual abilities of that student. They just value the student's character a bit more, thus rewarding the students who make an effort to make a difference in their campus and in other people. The SAT and ACT tests are also expensive, and much of the money that is made from these tests go to College Board. The SAT costs about $65 to $94, including the optional essay, and the cost to send scores to colleges is about $12 to $31, which in total will cost over $100, and this is excluding the possibility that a student would take it 2 or 3 more times. Now, this is incredibly excessive, especially to people who come from low-income families, and this is a major expense with the addition of college tuition, application fees, and basic human necessities. While the elimination of the required SAT or ACT tests, students can save more money for those future expenses. Also, College Board is a nonprofit organization, which profits greatly from the SAT, thus earning its title as a monopoly, benefiting from the colleges requiring these tests. In fact, College Board actually earns tax benefits from the IRS due to their status as a nonprofit educational institution. With this, I would like to offer a rebuttal that a portion of this money that is made from the SAT goes into financial aid for low-income students. Also, by taking the SAT, students could be eligible for certain scholarships, and that being said, instead of requiring the SAT, the money that comes from College Board could still get put into these scholarships and into these financial aid, and it would allow people to save their money for future expenses and for tuition rather than spending it on these standardized tests. Another tangent on this would be to make advanced placement tests for AP classes free, so that students could have a chance to earn that college credit. The waiving of the SAT and ACT this year for college admissions due to the coronavirus has also proven that it is not crucial parts of the selection process, and colleges have already announced that they will continue to be test optional in the future. This year, according to Fair Tests, 1,500 colleges have gone test optional in response to the pandemic and have decided that students who do not choose to submit these scores will not be set at a disadvantage. This is especially helpful this year since many of the testing opportunities have been canceled, and it is perfectly reasonable to exercise this kind of caution in a lockdown. This also helped alleviate a lot of the stress for applying to colleges without SAT or ACT scores. While tests were optional this year, schools have decided that they would become test optional for the next few years and beyond. For example, the University of California has announced that they will be test optional for the next 4 years. According to the New York Times, even many of the Ivy League schools have gone test optional, such as Harvard, Princeton, and Cornell. Furthermore, colleges and universities have agreed that the SAT is only a portion of the process for choosing the right students for the school. Especially due to the pandemic, families and parents should not have to worry about being able to pay for these standardized tests on top of worrying about paying for college tuition. With all of this, universities should focus on other aspects of the student profile during the application process rather than weighing their standardized test scores more heavily. The SAT and ACT are unrepresentative, expensive, and unnecessary, and overall schools should not require their applicants to submit scores in order to be admitted. We all hear about people who get perfect scores, and we hear about the people who are involved with cheating scandals with college admissions, and without the hassle of taking the SAT or ACT, students can showcase their true colors through the activities they do and the impact that they've made on their school and on their community. Thank you.